us to start our new life.
Ugh. After the complete disaster that was Alien Covenant, I wasn't exactly chomping at the bit to see the newest installment, but now that I have, it got me wondering, if you were hired to write one of these things, what's the biggest challenge you think you'd face? Would it be coming up with a monster even scarier than the Xenomorph? Would it be leaving your audience with a great cliffhanger so they're eager to find out what happens next?
And I'm still searching.
For me, no. I think your biggest challenge would be getting your characters into lethal situations repeatedly, but without forcing them to behave like utter morons. That's the biggest problem I had with both Covenant and, to a lesser degree, Prometheus, their use or misuse of the idiot plot.
Hey, baby.
A type of story that only works if the characters make really dumb mistakes. While the idiot plot isn't necessarily a bad thing if used correctly, I can't help but think a more effective horror story, particularly one set on a spaceship, would feature characters capable of basic problem solving, but who find themselves in situations that even a smart person would struggle with, and that's what I was really curious about going into Alien Romulus. Would the characters be face-palmingly stupid, or would they have what it takes to outsmart the idiot plot? To answer that, I'm going to go over all the major problems the Romulus characters faced so we can determine on a scale from smart to Covenant how intelligently they dealt with them. Then based on that, we can decide if a little post-hoc revision is warranted. But first things first. If you haven't seen Romulus, the basic setup is a group of kids are stuck on a perpetually dark mining colony they'd love to leave, but the nearest star system is 9 light years away, and they don't have any hibernation pods, which are somehow harder to come across than a spaceship, which they do have. Opportunity knocks, however, when an even bigger spaceship comes into orbit above them, and somehow only they know about it, so they decide to go raid it for equipment. Clunky logic aside, this actually isn't a bad setup, nor is it a bad decision by the characters, since an opportunity like this may never come along again. After 3 of them board the mysterious Renaissance, they soon come across signs that something awful happened here, but reluctant to give up so soon, they keep searching until they find the hibernation pods they're looking for, and then find the fuel to run them inside a room marked cryo storage. While Andy the android is able to grant them access, as soon as they remove the fuel, it triggers a lockdown that Andy cannot override. Though I found it mildly nonsensical that Andy would have the clearance to get them in but not out, it still leaves them with a good narrative problem. What are they supposed to do now? I didn't know, which means I also didn't know how Rain and Navarro were supposed to help. So when Rain took the memory chip from this wrecked android and put it inside Andy in the hopes it would grant him the clearance to reopen the door, all I could do was tip my cap. Not only is this a good idea, it's good writing. It presents the characters with a difficult problem, then gives us the audience a chance to solve it, before having one of the characters come up with a creative solution. So Rain is officially smart. But what about the other characters, like Tyler, the de facto leader of the group, who removes all this cryo fuel, which inadvertently thaws out all these dormant facehuggers? Is it fair to call Tyler dumb? I actually don't think so. Bear in mind, none of these guys have seen Alien, so they don't know what a facehugger is. If anyone's stupid here, I'd say it's the person who designed this room and thought the only thing needed to prevent the most dangerous parasite ever from getting out is the temperature. I also don't think it's fair to blame Andy for not understanding what's happening, because it's clear he's not exactly David in the thinking department. That might change when he gets this new chip put inside him, but it takes him a while to reboot, which is bad news for Tyler and Bjorn. What are they supposed to do now? Short of breaking this window, which Rain attempts, I couldn't think of anything, so you can't call the characters stupid. In fact, when a hugger tried to attach to Tyler, Bjorn wisely hit it with a shock stick, which saved Tyler's life. Yet after doing this one smart thing, Bjorn makes a pretty dramatic U-turn in the intelligence department. First, he needlessly hesitates after Andy reboots and opens the door. Then he falls down while trying to get through the next door, which allows a facehugger to get through and attach to Navarro. So what should Bjorn do to help this woman he thinks of as a sister? Should he, I don't know, do the thing he just did to save Tyler from the exact same situation? Seems logical, but somehow that never occurs to him. So the idiot plot has officially landed. But like I said before, the idiot plot isn't necessarily a bad thing so long as it's used correctly. Think of the excellent T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park. The characters make tons of mistakes, but you buy it because except for Grant, none of them know what they're doing.
Dan, freeze!
But Bjorn should know what he's doing because he just did it. So this is simply bad writing. But one narrative mistake doesn't have to ruin an entire movie. The characters can make up for it with what they now choose to do about Navarro. When no one has any bright ideas, Andy suggests they plug in this wrecked android to see if it can help. Once revived, this Ash lookalike named Rook takes one look at the situation and tells them to run.
Get out.
Which is technically good advice. If they listened, things would have worked out. But they understandably don't want to do that, so instead, Rain suggests they freeze the hugger's tail to remove it, which is smart, but would have been smarter if she'd thought of it sooner. Rook even tells them Navarro is likely already infected.
60-40 against your friend.
So they still have a difficult decision to make, and unfortunately, Bjorn is the one who makes it. First, he uses the shock stick on Andy, who was going to prevent Navarro from going on their ship. Then he not only takes Navarro on their ship, but tells her to detach from the Renaissance, which Navarro just goes along with, or at least starts to before the inevitable happens, during which she kicks the steering wheel, sending their ship careening into a different part of the Renaissance. Realizing how royally he screwed up, Bjorn then tries to redeem himself by destroying this rapidly formed xenomorph egg, which is a noble goal, but unlike Ripley in Aliens, who had a flamethrower, machine gun, grenade launcher combo, Bjorn only has the shock stick. So for a quick recap of Bjorn's greatest hits, first he failed to get through this door fast enough, which let a facehugger attached to Navarro. Then he failed to save Navarro when he absolutely could have. Then he brought Navarro back on their ship after she was infected and locked everyone else out. And finally, after failing to destroy this xenomorph egg, instead of cutting his losses and getting himself and Kay to safety, he instead decides to die in a manner so stupid that even Vickers would find it hilarious. Vickers, if you'll recall, had to take several steps to the side to avoid dying in Prometheus. Bjorn had to take one, but it was still one too many. So thanks to Bjorn, Tyler, Rain, and Andy are now stranded on the Renaissance, and the only way to get back to their ship is through this hallway filled with facehuggers. Despite the colossal amount of stupid it took to get here, this is a good narrative problem. How are they supposed to evade these tiny monsters that are attracted to heat? If you answered raise the temperature to make themselves invisible, you're pretty smart, but let me ask you an even harder question. If you were creeping through the most dangerous hallway of your life, and you had to be absolutely silent, and then your cell phone rang, what would you do? Would you silence the thing and wait till you're safe before answering? Or would you decide that this is a great place to stop and talk? I don't know what's stupider, that Tyler goes with option B or that Kay calls him because she doesn't know how to open a door. Don't they live on this ship? Or do I have that wrong? I don't know. But with Tyler's help, Kay gets the door open and then promptly walks off a ledge. Look, I'm not saying I would handle this situation well, but good God, lady, if you went through this door like a normal person and closed it behind you, you'd be safe, at least for the time being. But no, she's got a Homer Simpson her way through here. Meanwhile, thanks to her idiot brother, these three have to run for their lives from a horde of facehuggers, which is exciting, but since it was so avoidable, I don't think it was as exciting as it could have been. Then they meet Kay on the other side of a door that Andy refuses to open when he sees this recently birthed xenomorph waiting for them, and that causes these two to get really angry at Andy, because that makes sense. Fortunately, after Kay is taken, they find her a bit later in this haunted hallway and free her, but she is so weak that Andy suggests they inject her with the elixir of immortality that Rook created, and I don't quite understand why, because Rook must know the elixir doesn't work, right? At least not in a way you'd want it to. So wouldn't Andy also know it doesn't work? Or did Rook trick him?
And it worked on the rat.
I don't get it. Anyway, Rain wisely says not to use it, but then they get attacked, Tyler gets killed, Andy has a robot seizure, Rain gets Kay onto this elevator to their ship, but then she goes back for Andy, and once she's gone, Kay, who is on death's doorstep, takes the elixir anyway. After Rain finds Andy and removes the evil chip, they wind up cornered facing a bunch of xenomorphs. The good news is they have a very powerful machine gun. The bad news is they can't use it without spilling acid blood, which will eat through the hull of the ship. So what are they supposed to do? Once again, I didn't know, but Smarty Pants Rain does.
Rain, what are you doing?
Turning off the gravity generator.
And it leads to the best sequence of the movie. This is awesome, and it's a great example of how good writing leads to better action. Once back on their ship, Kay gives birth to this monstrosity, which Rain instantly loses track of, leaving Andy to get his throat cut, and Kay to get suckled to death by her own evil baby. Jesus Christ, that's dark. Then to get rid of it, Rain channels her inner Ripley by getting in a spacesuit and opening the hatch, but unlike with Ripley, we don't actually see the evil baby fall into space. So is the thing still on the ship, or is this just bad directing? I can't tell, and that's the end of the movie. So, did Alien Romulus outsmart the idiot plot? Clearly, it did not. But I wouldn't call it a train wreck either. It had some good sequences. It has two good characters with an interesting relationship, and I like how that relationship changes over the course of the story.
I'm afraid that's not in the best interest of the company.
I also like the setup with the mining colony, and even though the Renaissance is a blatant ripoff of the Nostromo, it's still a good haunted house for these kids to get stuck in. So, final challenge, how could you improve this movie? Personally, I don't think it needs any major changes to the plot. The main issue, just like with Covenant, is character stupidity. But unlike Covenant, which is beyond fixing, Romulus isn't stupid through and through. Sometimes the characters are really smart. It's mostly just this one stretch of stupid where the film really suffers. I bet if we can fix that, we'd have a solid thriller. So strap on your writing cap, because we're doing this. The only thing I'd change about the mining colony setup is that instead of meeting Rain while she dreams of this place she's never been to, we should see her dream of the day her father brought Andy home and fixed him up. Then when she wakes up, her father would be gone, Andy would look exactly the same, and we'd better understand why she thinks of him as a brother. Also, the arrival of the Renaissance going unnoticed by everyone other than these kids, I just cannot accept. This is a Wayland ship. Of course the company would know about it. So how could this have been better written? What if Navarro's job was flying this smaller spaceship for the company, and one night she picks up the Renaissance on radar, but instead of alerting her superiors like she's supposed to, she hides it from them somehow, and then rushes home and tells everyone there's something up there that might have what they need in order to escape from this place, but they need to go now because it's only a matter of time before the company finds out. There.
That was easy.
Once aboard the Renaissance, aside from Bjorn being insufferable, my only issue prior to the stupid stretch is I didn't like how the huggers were just in the open in the lab. That seems very careless. So instead, I'd have them in a big container and make it clear that that's what the cryofuel is cooling. And in order to get the fuel, which Andy cannot access, Tyler and Bjorn have to break the container, and that triggers the lockdown. Otherwise, this is a good sequence right up until we get to the cluster of stupid, which starts with Bjorn needlessly hesitating and then failing to use the shock stick to save Navarro. So how could this be improved? Obviously, Bjorn shouldn't hesitate. He should run like everyone else. But if several huggers jump on his back, and then he uses the shock stick repeatedly to get them off, the shock stick could lose its charge. Then when he makes it through the second door and sees Navarro, there's no longer an obvious way to save her. However, there's also no longer an easy way for Bjorn to get past Andy after Rook tells him that Navarro is likely infected and a danger to them all. So how else could you get these two aboard the ship? Bear in mind, as the writer, you want that to happen. The whole second half of the movie is these three getting back to the ship, which is a good narrative problem. So unless you plan on taking the story in a completely different direction, you want these two to mess everything up. You just don't want them to be so stupid that it takes your audience out of the story. So how could you accomplish that? I would have Rain suggest they put Navarro into cryosleep, so if she's infected, it would stop it, and then they can deal with the problem when they get to Uvaga. But Rook would say it's already too late. The evil Wayland scientists changed the hugger's DNA, so the gestation period, which used to take hours, now only takes minutes. So if Navarro is infected, there's nothing they can do. And then when they all look over to Navarro to see her reaction, they'd realize that Bjorn has already snuck her away, and he didn't hear the last of what Rook said. Next up, there's the issue of Navarro detaching the ship without a second thought, which I didn't like. She should show some concern for the others. But there's an easy fix to that. We just need need a little exposition. So what if Navarro tells Bjorn she's not going to leave the others behind, and Bjorn says they're not going to. He's going to put her into cryosleep to show the others that she's safe, but it's going to take him a minute to get set up, and in the meantime, the only way to keep Andy off the ship is to detach, so she has to do that first. Navarro could reluctantly agree, and then the situation could play out the same with the alien birth and the ship crashing, and we'll just overlook the fact that a spaceship in the future would probably have some sort of safeguard against this. Anyway, after the crash, we are just bombarded with low IQ moves. First, Bjorn dies, the stupidest death possible. Then Kay calls Tyler because she can't figure out how to open a door on a ship she lives on. Then Tyler decides that Facehugger Central is a great place to have a conversation. Kay walks off a ledge, and finally, Rain and Tyler get really angry at Andy for not killing them all. So this is gonna take some doing. I would start off by switching up the order a little. Tyler and Rain would try to establish contact but get no answer. Then they'd turn up the heat and traverse Hugger Hallway, but this time there'd be no phone call. They'd just creep along and it'd be really tense until something falls or whatever, and it turns into this mad dash that they barely survive, and then Tyler can get the call from Kay, who's just regained consciousness and is in bad shape. She's fallen down to the main deck, the ship is in emergency mode so it's dark with the strobe lights and everything. Tyler would tell her to stay put, they're coming to her, but she'd say that something came out of Navarro. Andy would hear this and say it's the xenomorph and she needs to get the hell out of there. So Kay would inch along until she sees the egg, but the xenomorph is already coming out. So in her weakened state, she'd have to crawl past the xenomorph as it slowly gains the ability to stand and everything. She'll get to the door, agonizingly slow, open it, take one look back, and of course the xenomorph is standing right behind her. But just as it's about to grab her, we'll hear this clang. The xenomorph will turn, and it's Bjorn, bloodied up but still standing. The xenomorph will rush him, but Bjorn will say, "This is for my sister," plug in the shock stick, and shove it right in the xenomorph's mouth. There'll be this huge electric surge, and that is what knocks Kay backwards through the doorway. These guys will be listening. They'll rush to the door, peer into the darkness, scanning until they see Kay lying there, unconscious. Tyler would tell Andy to open the door. They have to go get her, but Andy would say, wait, something's not right. The airlock is still open. So they'd look some more, and the xenomorph could suddenly appear in the window. Or Bjorn could smack against the glass, but be dead. And these three would be like, what the hell? But then he'd fall away and the xenomorph that was holding him up would slide into view. Either way, the monster and Tyler would be face to face, and the xenomorph's mouth would be all jacked up thanks to the shock stick. So Bjorn at least went out like a G. Then Rain and Andy would drag Tyler away, and the rest of the movie would basically play out the same. Except we gotta see the evil baby fall into space in the end, because come on, that's the money shot. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Alien Romulus, and how it easily could have been improved with some minor changes that I'm kind of baffled the filmmakers didn't think of. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.